Have you ever found yourself thinking about the good old days? You know, that warm, fuzzy feeling for a time that's gone? It's a feeling we all get. But what happens when that feeling gets twisted, when it's used as a political weapon? Well, that's what we're diving into today, the powerful and, let's be honest, often dangerous world of political nostalgia. We're going to see how a simple, personal longing for the past gets turned into a tool to control the present and to own the future. So here's our roadmap. We'll kick things off with the absolutely wild origin story of the word nostalgia. Then we'll see how it becomes a political force by looking at three totally different case studies: the catastrophic collapse of Yugoslavia, the deliberate surgical erasure of Prussia, and the incredibly messy reunification of Germany. And finally, we'll try to figure out what it all means for us, how we can live with the ghosts of our own history. All right, so where did this whole idea of nostalgia even come from? I'm willing to bet its history is not what you think. See, it didn't start out as a sentimental sigh for a bygone era. It actually began as a serious medical diagnosis. Yep, you heard that right. The word literally means return pain. It was actually invented to describe a severe, sometimes even fatal type of homesickness. It was a disease, a real clinical condition that doctors treated with things like leeches and opium. The key word here is pain, a deep, physical ache for a home you just can't get back to. And the journey this word took is just fascinating. It starts in 1688 as a diagnosis for Swiss mercenaries who missed their mountains. But by the 19th century, it had completely transformed. It was no longer a disease of the body, it became a political crime, a label you'd slap on someone who was standing in the way of progress. And today, of course, that political meaning is stronger than it has ever been. So, how in the world did we get from a medical term for homesickness to a modern political strategy? Let's dig into how this very personal feeling of longing gets scaled up, weaponized, and used to mobilize millions of people. This quote from the brilliant scholar Svetlana Boym just nails it, doesn't it? The 20th century kicked off with these grand, futuristic, utopian dreams. But after those dreams crashed and burned, something else filled that void, a powerful, collective look backward. And that longing for a simpler, so-called golden age became the perfect fuel for a whole new kind of politics. The playbook is actually pretty simple, but boy, is it effective. First, you convince people that the past was better, that something pure and essential has been lost. Then you tell them that only you, the leader, or your movement, can bring it back. It creates this powerful us versus them story, right? It blames all of today's problems on losing that idealized past, and it frames going backward as the only way forward. It's a fantasy, for sure, but a very, very compelling one. And you see this strategy play out in a couple of really different ways. Take Putin, for example. His appeal is to a collective nostalgia, a memory of the Soviet Union's superpower status, a story of empire and national glory. Trump's nostalgia, on the other hand, it's a bit more personalized. It's a longing for a time of individual economic success, a simpler social structure, that classic idea of the American dream before things got, complicated. Two totally different flavors, but they're using the exact same ingredient, the promise to restore a better yesterday. So what happens when this stuff leaves the speeches and hits the real world? Our first case study, the breakup of Yugoslavia, is a horrifying look at what happens when these historical grievances get fanned into the literal flames of war. It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. The death of the strongman leader Tito left this huge power vacuum. And who filled it? Ethno-nationalist leaders who immediately started weaponizing centuries-old rivalries and resentments. So these declarations of independence weren't just political moves, they were triggers. They lit the fuse for a horrific war, fueled by competing, violent, and totally incompatible visions of the past. Okay, so if Yugoslavia is a warning about weaponizing the past, our next case study explores the complete opposite extreme. What if a piece of history is considered so dangerous, so toxic, that the only solution is to just delete it? This helmet, the Pickelhaube, it's way more than just headgear. It became the symbol of Presso-German militarism. This whole culture of rigid discipline, aristocratic power, and aggressive expansion that many people blame for starting 2 world wars. So after 1945, the Allies decided this entire culture had to be ripped out by the roots. The logic here was pretty stark and pretty brutal. Prussia wasn't just a place on a map, it was an idea, It was an ideology of aggression and authoritarianism that, in the Allies' view, had poisoned Germany and dragged the world into war twice. They believed that to build a new, peaceful Germany, the old Prussia simply could not be allowed to exist. I mean, just listen to the finality in that declaration. This wasn't a treaty, it wasn't a negotiation, it was a surgical removal. With just a few words, a state that had shaped European history for hundreds of years was literally wiped off the map by a legal decree, a ghost, exercised by law. So our final case study offers a third way, not weaponizing the past or erasing it, but trying to merge two profoundly different pasts. Let's take a look at the incredibly complex, messy, and unbelievably expensive reality of German reunification. Think about the challenge in 1990. This wasn't just about tearing down a wall. This was about smashing together two societies that had lived on different planets for over 40 years. You had West Germany with its booming free market economy, and then you had East Germany, whose state-run economy was an absolute wreck. We're talking productivity that was less than a third of the West's. How do you even start to stitch those two worlds together? Policymakers were facing this insane to-do list, and every single item was a potential landmine. It was a constant tightrope walk. Convert the currency too generously, and you instantly bankrupt every business in the East. But if you don't send enough money, you risk a total social collapse. Every single decision was loaded with economic and social dynamite. Let's just talk about the money for a second, because the numbers are mind-boggling. 770 billion Deutschmarks transferred from West to East by 1994 alone. To put that into perspective, that's like giving every single person in East Germany over 12,000 marks every year for 6 years straight. This wasn't just a political union, it was one of the biggest economic rescue packages in modern history, a deliberate, costly attempt to buy a shared future. So, we've seen the past weaponized into a bloodbath, we've seen it erased from the map, and we've seen it integrated at an almost unimaginable cost. What's the big takeaway from these incredibly powerful and really different stories about how we live with our ghosts? This right here is the heart of it all. History isn't just some dusty old thing that happens to us. The way we remember it, the stories we choose to tell, the parts we emphasize, those are active choices we make every single day. And as the stories of Yugoslavia, Prussia, and Germany show us, those choices can lead to war, to erasure, or to a really difficult, really expensive, but maybe, just maybe, a hopeful union. Ultimately, this is the question that every society and every one of us has to answer. When we hear people calling for a return to a golden age, are they selling us a cozy home to retreat into, a past that maybe never even existed? Or are they offering us lessons from that past to help us build a better future? Acknowledging our ghosts is one thing. Letting them haunt us and control us is something else entirely. And understanding that difference, well, that's the choice we all have to make.